What is up, guys? It is AJ. Today we're talking about some fight news. Luke Rockhold will be leaving the UFC. It's announced he's a free agent. Jalin Turner and Dan Hooker are fighting at UFC 285. Kelvin Gastelum is fighting against Chris Curtis. Song Yadong and Ricky Simone has just been announced. And also Alexandr Volkov and Alexandr Romanov throw down in a nice heavyweight battle. Make sure you guys smash that like button if you're new, subscribe. I first am going to touch upon Dan Hooker and Jalin Turner. This matchup is really exciting to me as long as Dan Hooker he's a pretty tall and lanky lightweight. Jalin Turner is a freak of freaks with his freaking length. Holy shit, 6'3", 75.5-inch reach, and he's on fire right now. You look at the side of Dan Hooker, 6 foot, 75.5-inch reach. The reach is identical, but I don't believe the actual arm length is the same. Jalin Turner is just a little bit of a narrow body. The win streak Jalin Turner is on is super impressive. Josh Kulabayel, Brock Weaver, Yoros Madik, Jamie Millarkey, Brad Riddell, who he beat in 45 seconds. 5 fights in a row, 5 finishes. Dan Hooker, on the contrary side, you know, he had 2 bad losses, but Islam Makhachev is the champ, and Arnold Allen is one of the best featherweights on the planet right now. He then comes back and beats Claudio Puelles up. Now, you're matching him up with Jalin Turner, a guy who I think can threaten him in the striking and grappling department. I think the athleticism definitely favors Jalin Turner. I feel like he's going to beat Dan Hooker here. At this point, I got to go with the youth. I got to go with the guy that has the momentum in his favor. Early prediction for this fight, I think Jalin Turner wins. I lean it win by decision, but the way Turner's finishing these fights, I'd be stupid to call it that. So I'm going to actually say I think Jalin Turner might pull off a TKO, maybe even a submission. So inside of the distance is what I'm thinking for Jalin over Dan Hooker. He's going to send Dan back, but really it's a battle of the up-and-coming guy versus someone holding on by just a thread in the top of that lightweight division. I mean, Dan Hooker's not old by any means. He's only 32. Jalin Turner's 27. Momentum, youth, and I think just a, vastly superior physical advantage that he has too is going to be a big factor. So Jalin Turner for the win is what I'm feeling like. I don't think Dan Hooker is as good as he once was either. And yeah, I'm going to actually call, I was leaning decision, but we're going to change it. We're going to say win. I'm going to call submission, but inside of the distance, I think there's a chance for a knockout. Looking upon the next subject is Luke Rockhold. He's leaving the UFC and he's going to explore other ventures. And I feel like the Bellator name is one that's going to be calling him. My concern is they jump him into a title fight. Johnny Eblen is really good. I know he's fighting soon, defending his belt. I assume he gets past a very tough Russian threat of a name that's totally escaping me right now, so I might as well pull up Johnny Eblen. But I feel like the side of Luke Rockhold might be making a mistake leaving the UFC. I don't know. I think keep with the UFC run. He's had a good thing going. He gave a close fight to Paulo Costa. Maybe more money will be elsewhere. It's Anatoly Tokov taking on the side of Johnny Eblen. I know more money maybe is out there, so I guess go after the money. But if the UFC is paying the same, I don't know. I want to keep Luke Rockhold against some of the better guys in the world. If he goes to Bellator, aside from a Johnny Eblen fight, we have a Yoel Romero rematch. Where else does he fit in? I mean, they're going to put him maybe at light heavyweight. They're going to throw him in there with Phil Davis. I think he loses that fight. You're going to throw him in there with Corey Anderson. I don't think he wins there either. I think there's a lot of killers in Bellator. The silent killers. Bellator, a lot of people hate on Bellator. Their views are not as good as they used to be, but their talent is better than ever. They have some of the best fighters on the planet. I don't think it's easy for Luke over in Bellator. The money fights are there. His most recent Instagram post, he said Jake, so obviously maybe angling towards a boxing match with Jake Paul. How likely is that, though? Is Jake Paul really going to fight Luke Rockhold? Jake's scheduled to fight Tommy Fury, a legitimate boxer. He beats him. Maybe Luke Rockhold is there, but how many eyes does Luke Rockhold bring in? It's not a bigger fight than Anderson Silva. Yeah, I think Luke Rockhold is still in the position where he's more likely to get top-tier MMA fights out of the UFC as opposed to be getting a big boxing match against the likes of Jake Paul. For his wallet, I'd love to see it. I'm a Luke Rockhold fan, but we all have to admit, he's a cocky guy. He's always had that arrogant flow. I do think that he'll be overly confident and he'll jump into Bellator and first fight out. I feel like he'll be willing to accept the title shot if that's offered to him. I think it's a mistake. Johnny Eblen is a fucking monster right now. Tokov is a Russian Savage. I don't think those are good matchups. Vadim Nemkov at light heavyweight, I think, knocks him out. I don't feel that he fares extremely well against the creme de la creme in any premier organization. Will PFL maybe make him an offer? Only if Jake Paul is interested in fighting him. Then PFL might be like, okay, we can work with you, Mr. Luke Rockhold. We'll make something happen if they want to do that matchup. I don't know, though. Does it really sell? How interested am I in Luke Rockhold, Jake Paul? I'd watch it. I'd like a little bit of banter. But on the side of Jake Paul, he might not take that fight because Luke Rockhold's about 6'3". I believe he has like a near 77-inch reach. Don't quote me on it. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that's it. He's got long arms. He fights well from range, got good straight shots, has always been a pretty decent boxer. The chin's questionable-ish, but not really. He went 3 rounds with Paulo Costa. The risk to reward ratio fighting a Luke Rockhold, I think, is lower than it was with an Anderson Silva. You beat an MMA GOAT. Not that Luke Rockhold isn't one of the great middleweights. He certainly is. But on paper, his UFC run, as good as it was, it came to an end kind of fast. Luke Rockhold had his time, and then the chin kind of gave out. Michael Bisping knocking him out. As fluky as people want to call it, I know he destroyed Bisping in the first one. Bisping still slept him that next time out. And then the Romero losses. Obviously, he did well fighting against Costa before that. Jan Blachowicz knocks him out. He's lost a lot of fights to marquee talent. I still think that Luke Rockhold is a top 10 UFC middleweight. I feel like he can beat some of the guys, but his punch resistance is definitely a concern against guys with some dynamite power. Paulo Costa, as much as we look at Paulo and we think of him as a knockout artist, he's not a one-punch KO guy. He's a volume puncher who bullies his opponents and then knocks them out. Weird situation? Maybe. I guess not weird. Good for Luke to give him options. I say Bellator's going to get him. That's my prediction. He'll be in Bellator. He'll rush into a title fight there, and he might be in trouble. We shall see. Let's jump to Kelvin Gastelum and Chris Curtis. I really like this fight. I think that Kelvin Gastelum beats him on the cards in a 3-rounder. But Chris Curtis can crack. Gastelum's chin is legendary at this point, so I do feel like Kelvin Gastelum's going to be able to absorb the punches that Curtis is throwing at him. I think Gastelum will find straight shots through the guard. I think he's a tricky boxer to deal with, underrated jab, good wrestling. I think that Kelvin Gastelum unanimous decision is pretty likely here, but I think it's going to be a good matchup, a fun fight. Both guys come to scrap. I just think Kelvin Gastelum's a bit better everywhere. Beats a Chris Curtis, who I still think is a fun guy in the weight class. I like Chris Curtis a lot. Now Kelvin Gastelum, he's getting some momentum on his side. What's the last few been looking like? Lost Cannonier, lost Whitaker. Now you fight Chris Curtis. This is a more favorable matchup. Chris Curtis coming off the big win over Buckley. Before that, he lost to a top guy in the world in Jack Hermanson, who tapped out Kelvin Gastelum in like 50 seconds with leg lock. I like Kelvin, though, in this fight. I'm going to pick Kelvin Gastelum to win early. I think that he'll win. I don't see that pick even changing. I think I'll be sticking with my guns on that one through and through. I like KG. He was supposed to fight Nasruddin Imavov. I think he was going to win that fight, and I really like him here against Chris Curtis. Excited to see him turn around. It's UFC 287. It's April. We got a bit of time before it happens, but I like the fight. Good matchup. This one is a real high-stakes bantamweight fight. Song Yadong versus Ricky Simón. You look at Ricky Simón, he is on a fucking tear right now, and I think he's one of the most underrated guys. He's 20 wins with 3 losses. That loss was against Rob Font in 2019. Since then, he beat Ray Borg, Gaetano Perello, not a big win. Brian Kelleher, tough guy, but not a huge win. Knocked out a Sun Tzu. It's a wash to Sun Tzu, but beat a 16-0 Jack Shore. That's a real legit W. He finished them also. And he also has a W over Merab Divashvili back in 2018. I would say that Ricky Simón's pretty top tier as far as the bantamweight division goes. Now you look at Song Yadong on the opposite side, not a wrestler, which Ricky Simón is a wrestling specialist, but he also can box a bit too. He's developed some stand-up pressure wrestling style. I like the way he's gritty like that, but Song Yadong hits with fucking dynamite. He's so young. He's 25. If he lands, he can do serious damage. He was beaten up badly against Corey Sandhagen. Prior to that, though, he had 3 fights in a row. He had 1. Julio Arce, Marlon Moraes, and Casey Kenny. And then a loss before that was Kyler Phillips. How I'm looking at it, I think Ricky Simón's wrestling is going to be a factor in this matchup. A ton of pressure wrestling. It's not an easy fight. Yadong's power is very legit, and I could see him hurting Simón. But the athletic wrestling style, the pressure of his game, the trickiness to Ricky Simón, I think even standing up, he's got his own little flow. He's pretty, I don't want to call him slick, though, because I feel like I save that term for really good strikers. He's not tremendous on the feet, but he's tricky. He's got decent head movement. He closes the gap well. He can wrestle. Song Yadong's a strong guy, team alpha male dude, good wrestling defense, but I think Ricky Simón can land takedowns, and I think he will end up winning the fight on the cards. That fight's going down April 22nd. It's not for a while, actually. We got 3 months until then, but it's a damn good matchup. I'm looking forward to it. I think Ricky Simón's momentum continues upwards, but at just 25, Song Yadong is a guy you literally can never count out, but I'm picking Ricky Simón early here. Now, the heavyweight matchup that's going down, Alexandr Volkov, Alexandr Romanov. I think that the winner of this fight should be matched up with Jalin Almeida. I was kind of surprised to see it because Alexandr Volkov has a win over Marcin Tybura recently. Alexandr Romanov just recently lost to Tybura. Also, Volkov's coming off of a very impressive knockout win against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Now they're throwing him Romanov, who stylistically is a nightmare matchup. His wrestling skills are A1. He can slam opponents early and beat their ass. The fight, even with Tybura, Romanov is beating the shit out of him in that first round. Then he starts fading later. Tybura steals the decision. I think that Romanov has a legit chance to finish Volkov. When I did my Every Fight to Make series, I said I want Jalin Almeida versus Alexandr Volkov. Now Romanov gets this shot. I think Romanov's grappling is good enough to beat a Volkov. I think he's going to finish him. I know that Volkov went 5 rounds with Curtis Blades, but it's a different style that Romanov has with the wrestling. I think Romanov will get on top, do some damage, and eventually find a submission. That Tom Aspinall submission loss is something that I look at and I'm like, okay, this is the loss for Volkov. I say, okay, if we find a guy that really can take someone down and finish with submissions, and I think Romanov's that guy, even though Curtis Blades is a ferocious wrestler with tremendous ground and pound, stylistically, I see how he was able to go long with Volkov. There's no sub-threat. I think you're better off trying to submit a Volkov than you are trying to ground and pound his face in or knock him out. I think Romanov is going to do just that. I think he'll end up winning by sub. If Volkov, though, is able to survive past the first round and a half, expect Romanov to slow down. I do think the cardio issues are going to be addressed and he's going to be training them hard, but he's already lost a lot of weight. Like since his UFC debut, he was 265. Recent fight, he was 239. I feel like he'll come into this fight around 239. I don't think you want to be too thin when fighting a guy as big as Volkov at 6'7", but expect takedowns from Romanov. And I'm going to say submission win. Stylistically, it's a matchup that really favors him here. Tybura is the guy that's known for coming back from getting his ass whooped and winning. Romanov, I think, can beat a Volkov when the momentum is right on his side early on. And I think he'll win by sub. And then I think you look maybe towards the Jalin Almeida-Romanov fight, which is a battle of elite grapplers. Risky for the UFC to do because both these guys are very marketable and both also bring different markets, right? Romanov, Moldovan guy. I don't know how big the Moldovan MMA market really is, but we got a couple guys from there. Who else is from there? I believe Spivak is Moldovan, if I'm not mistaken. Another name not coming to me. Let me know in the comments if you guys can think of any Moldovan UFC prospects. Romanov, definitely one of them. And I think he beats Drago Volkov and then fights Jalin Almeida. The MMA game is always bringing the heat. We got new news coming through consistently, and I want to do a better job of dropping the news reactions, so I need the love from you guys. Make sure you smash that like button. Let me know what you think of my news reactions and early predictions in the comments. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Keep it locked in. I'm going to be dropping as much content as possible throughout this break week. And then we're back with a vengeance on Sunday for my full card UFC fight night predictions for that Spivak versus Lewis card. Thank you all for tuning into this. Much love, and I will see you all in the next one.